Foundation level. Objective 1.4.1. K2. Summarize the different test activities and tasks. Again, there's a 100% chance of getting a question about the test process and the test activities in the exam. Usually, you need to know the sequences of the testing activities in the test process and which testing tasks are carried out during each test activity. The first question gives you a situation in 2 lines and then asks, which of the following activities is a part of test analysis? Actually, questions like this taught me to start by reading the last line of the body of the question before reading the whole question. See, if the question is, which of the following activities is a part of test analysis? Then the scenario at the beginning of the body of the question is irrelevant. You can decide which answer option is part of the test analysis just by reading the answer options. That will save some time for sure. And yes, in the exam we need to manage our time very carefully. Option A. Estimating that testing the integration with the payment service will take 8 person days. Estimating is part of test planning, so this is incorrect. Option B. Deciding that the team should test if it is possible to properly share payment between many users. Here, we are trying to understand the requirements more and deciding on what test conditions to test. This is certainly part of the test analysis. We can stop here, but let's continue to confirm our answer. Option C. Using boundary value analysis, BVA, to derive the test data for the test cases that check the correct payment processing for the minimum allowed amount to be paid. Deriving test data is done during the test implementation phase, so this is incorrect. Option D. Analyzing the discrepancy between the actual result and the expected result after executing a test case that checks the process of payment with a credit card and reporting a defect. Analyzing the discrepancy between the actual result and the expected result and reporting a defect are also activities that are done during test execution. The correct answer is B. Let's look at the second question. Which test activity involves working with test data requirements, test conditions, test environment requirements, and test cases? This is a little tricky. You might see test conditions and say test analysis, and you might see test environments or test data and say test implementation. But the key word in this question is working with, which means you already have test data requirements, test conditions, test environment requirements, and test cases in your hands. Having both test conditions and test cases together as inputs is confusing. If you have test conditions, then it should be test analysis. But if you have test cases, then you're already beyond the test analysis phase and in the test design phase. Thinking of test data requirements and test environment requirements is new. Let's talk about test environment requirements because it's easier. We know the output of the test design phase is the test environment design. So the input should be the test environment requirements, even though the term test environment requirements was not mentioned in the syllabus. But the logic says the input to any design phase is requirements, and the output is the design. The same can be said about the test data requirements. So we can confirm that the test design activity involves working with test data requirements, test conditions, test environment requirements, and test cases. Therefore, the correct answer A. The third question is an easy one, but notice here that they expect 2 options, not just one. Which of the following test activities are most likely to involve the application of boundary value analysis and equivalence partitioning? The question can be formatted as, when do we use the test design techniques? You will solve this question more easily when you finish Chapter 4, which is dedicated to test design techniques. The title of the chapter is Test Analysis and Design Techniques. But let's try to solve this problem using what we have learned already. Option A. Test implementation is not likely to involve the use of test techniques, as it is mostly concerned with assembling test cases into test procedures, while test techniques create test cases. Option B. Test execution is not likely to involve the use of test design techniques, as it is mostly concerned with executing the test cases or test procedures that were already created earlier. Option C. Test monitoring is related to test management. No test design techniques are involved here. Option D. Test analysis is likely to involve the use of test techniques to identify test conditions. Test design is likely to involve using test techniques to create test cases from test conditions and coverage items. So the correct answer is D and E, test analysis and test design. The last question is in a different style. You have 4 testing tasks and 4 testing activities, and you need to map each testing task to the correct test activity. The way to solve such a style of question is to start with the items that you're 100% sure of. For instance, you don't need to start with number 1. And sometimes, if I am in a good mood, I take a quick look at the answer option and check which item would solve the question instantly. Well, items 3 or 4 would solve the question if we decide on each one of them. 3. Organize test cases into test procedures is definitely a test implementation activity, which maps to item C. 3C only exists in answer B, so B is the correct answer. To confirm, 4. Evaluate test basis and test object is A, test analysis activity. This is correct. 1. Derive test cases from test conditions is B, test design activity. Correct. And finally, 2. Identify reusable testware is a D, test completion activity. Correct? I guess even though such questions seem like long ones, but I think they are the easiest to solve.